The adrenaline-fueled peak of heads of state begins thousands of feet in the air, isolated within the heavily fortified, luxurious, and state-of-the-art cabin of Air Force One. Up until this exact moment in the narrative, the movie treats the audience to a hilarious, petty, and highly public diplomatic rivalry between two wildly mismatched world leaders. The massive, deeply insecure American president Will Derringer, played with incredible comedic timing by John Cena, and the sharp, fiercely pragmatic British Prime Minister Sam Clarke, portrayed by Idris Elba. But the petty political bickering takes a sharp, terrifying turn into blockbusting action when their luxury transport is suddenly targeted, ambushed, and violently compromised over Eastern Europe by Viktor Gradov's elite global mercenaries. Heavy-duty alarms begin to blare in a deafening rhythmic cycle. Red emergency lighting bathes the executive cabin in a bloody, ominous hue, and the thin veneer of political decorum completely shatters in an instant. Heavy, loose items, crystal champagne glasses, and top-secret classified diplomatic folders fly violently across the room as the aircraft takes a sudden stomach-churning dip straight into the thick storm clouds below. As the massive plane begins a terrifying terminal tailspin, the contrast between the two world leaders becomes an absolute comedic goldmine for the viewer. President Derringer, who is actually a former Hollywood action star, famous for a fictional, over-the-top commando franchise called Water Cobra, completely freezes under pressure. He frantically tries to summon his fictional movie hero instincts, shouting cheesy, overly dramatic lines that sound like they belong on a cheesy 90s movie poster rather than in a real life-or-death international crisis. His eyes wide with terror, he grips the leather seats as the cabin loses pressure. Meanwhile, a visibly furious and annoyed Prime Minister Clarke relies on his actual, ultra-gritty, real-world SAS background to violently override the growing chaos. Clarke takes total command of the descending cabin, his deep voice cutting fiercely through the roaring depressurization wind as he physically forces the terrified, hulking president into a tactical parachute rig. They exchange frantic, breathless barbs, arguing over straps, buckles, and basic safety protocols while the metal hull of Air Force One groans, sparks, and threatens to tear itself apart around them. The camera captures the brilliant physical comedy of Cena's massive frame being aggressively bossed around by Elba's clinical, intensely focused survival drive. With a final, explosive cabin breach that sucks the remaining oxygen from the room, they are violently ejected into the freezing, pitch-black night sky, plunging headfirst through the clouds into a brutal tree-smashing landing in the unforgiving, densely wooded wilderness below, gasping for air as their parachutes tangle in the canopy. After surviving the brutal bone-rattling parachute drop, dusting off the woodland debris, and navigating a tense, deeply paranoid trek through hostile enemy territory, the battered and bruised duo manages to slip across the border and into a hidden, dimly lit CIA safehouse located in a gritty industrial sector of Warsaw. They fully expect a highly coordinated, stone-faced elite tactical extraction team to greet them at the door to sweep them away to safety. Instead, they run straight into Marty Comer, played with brilliant, high-strung, anxious energy by Jack Quaid. Marty is a low-level, completely isolated CIA tech officer who undergoes a literal visible existential meltdown the exact moment he opens the heavy security door and realizes who is standing on his porch. Realizing he is standing face-to-face with President Derringer, his childhood action movie idol, Marty goes into an absolute unhinged fanboy overdrive that grinds the pacing of their escape to a hilarious halt. The script beautifully stretches this slow-burn comedic tension as Marty completely ignores the impending global security crisis, the tracking teams outside, and the fact that both world leaders are literally bleeding onto his floor. Instead, he stammers nervously, trips over his own feet, offers the stranded world leaders stale processed snacks, and begins to ramble about deep, obscure cinematic lore from the Water Cobra movies. He practically begs for a signature on an old, dusty DVD cover he pulls from his desk, while a physically exhausted and thoroughly unimpressed Clarke stews in silent, murderous impatience, holding his face in his hands and visibly questioning his life choices. The hilarious, light-hearted atmosphere is violently ripped apart on a dime when Gradov's most ruthless elite assassins, Sasha and Olga, breach the safe house's outer perimeter with a blinding flashbang that shatters the windows. The sequence instantly explodes into pure chaotic adrenaline. Desperate to prove his worth, live out his tactical agent fantasies, and impress his silver screen hero, Marty activates the safe house's automated tactical defenses and launches into a spectacular, movie-grade counter-ambush. Heavy caliber bullets instantly shred the drywall, spraying white plaster dust, wood splinters, and fiberglass insulation into the air like a blinding winter blizzard, completely ruining the visibility in the room. High-tech defense gadgets malfunction hilariously, sparking wildly, spinning out of control, and throwing a chaotic wrench into their own survival plan. Marty screams tactical jargon at the top of his lungs, treating a literal life-or-death shootout like a high-stakes, exclusive meet-and-greet event. The visual choreography here is frantic, loud, and deeply claustrophobic. The camera tracks Cena and Elba scrambling wildly across the floor for cover, ducking behind crumbling kitchen counters and shattering glass tables while Marty tries and hilariously struggles to pull off the kind of stylized action stunts he grew up watching Derringer perform on theater screens. The final segment of this epic sequence captures the absolute unmitigated chaos of the immediate aftermath as the secure safe house is completely overrun, set ablaze, and reduced to smoking, bullet-riddled rubble, with their official CIA cover entirely blown and Marty's tactical defense lines failing around them. The heavy burden of physical survival falls squarely back onto the broad shoulders of the two mismatched heads of state, spilling out of the shattered rear exit doors and into the dark, labyrinthine, rain-slicked alleyways of Warsaw. The movie treats us to a masterful extended game of cat and mouse against a relentless wave of surviving mercenaries who are tracking them through the shadows. What makes this lengthy, breathless sequence the absolute creative highlight of the entire film is the raw, uncoordinated contrast in their combat styles as they are forced to fight hand-to-hand, side-by-side for the very first time. President Derringer, completely out of his depth in a real fistfight without a script, a stunt double, or camera angles to save him, frantically tries to execute theatrical, heavy-handed WWE-style body slams, dramatic theatrical tackles, and impractical movie punches. While they look incredibly flashy, they hilariously fail to work against cold-blooded trained killers in the real world.